Hi, friends. Welcome. I'm beginning a new video series of interviews, and this is uh, what I used to do on the radio for 15 years is interview people and talk about their work and their books and all the lovely contributions they make to life and to the world. And I always interview people that I think are great, people that I would use their service, that I would buy their book, that I think they have something unique to offer, or a different spin of talking about spiritual principles or practical suggestions for improving our life. And I'm excited to begin this new chapter on video. So my first guest is Corrina Porterfield, who is a health and wellness expert and just fabulous in so many ways and deeply spiritual and aware and very helpful. And I actually have utilized her service in the past and found her to be really quite special. So I think you'll appreciate her. She's our first guest, and there's many more to come as I launch this new version of sharing people. Okay, so enjoy. Take care. I am so happy that you agreed to do this because you are the traditional therapist, traditional healer who you don't advertise. You don't get out there and say, hey, look at me, look at me. But when I became aware of what you have to offer and who you are, I couldn't resist. I'm like, I need to get this woman into my space. And also, I just think what you do is so remarkable because I've experienced you in the first person and I wanted to share you. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So I know I said a lot. I mean, and just for the folks at home, check this out, guys. This is just the beginning. You see all these pages, typed pages. Some of them are Corrina. This is what we got to get through, and it's not going to happen today. So let's just get to know you a bit and let people feel your magnitudinous. That's my special word that's only assigned to you. So what's your story, girl? How did you become you? How did you come to be this remarkable healer with all this science stuff going on? And Lockheed Martin, for God's sakes, what healer does that?
Right. Well, it started as a junior high schooler, and my friends, I was that friend that people called like when they're having a hard time. And I just needed someone to listen. And I don't know, I just had this way of just being present for them. And as I was growing up, I was really into athletics and fitness and nutrition. My mom was an herbalist and she cooked really healthy food. And then there was just the time when you have to decide, oh, am I going to go to college? What am I going to study? And I went to Colorado State University, and they had this wonderful program called Wellness Program Management. And back then, wellness really wasn't even that big of a word in the 80s. Like wellness, what's that?
True. What's right? Wellness? It's like something in the ground that you go and get water out of, right?
Right. So I'm sitting in this Wellness 101 class, and she puts spices up on the chalkboard, SPICES. And I'm like, ooh, what's this? And she started talking about spiritual wellness, physical wellness, intellectual wellness, wellness involved with your career or your, cultural wellness, and then emotional wellness and sensual sexual wellness. And I was like, what? Because I was aware of the physical realm. So that was the beginning for me. So I was lucky enough to study it in college. And then, yes, I got a degree in wellness program management and got my master's and ended up working for Lockheed Martin at Buckley Air Force Base. So I worked with Air Force, Army, Navy, Marines, and all these aerospace.
Did you do that on purpose? Or how do you get from that to,
Yeah. I had a great advisor, and she's like, listen, this is your perfect job. It was textbook what I had studied in college, health promotion for employees to help improve performance of the employees. And so I was hired to work with nutrition and exercise, and was there for about 6 or 7 years.
I'm just curious. I mean, I don't want you to lose your train of thought, but what was that culture like for someone with your sensitivity, or were you awakened enough at that point to understand the impact it might be having on your system?
It did have a big impact because the energy is intense there. And actually I worked there when 9/11 happened. So I had a high security clearance, and it took a lot to get onto the facility. And it was intense, but what I would find in my meditations, and I would be journaling information from my kind of higher self, and it's like I was this light. I was just this beacon of light. I was the wellness center girl. So people would come, and it was a place where they could just work out. They could have a chat. We talk about behavior modification, but in a way that wasn't so challenging. And I did a lot of stress management. And I felt like the little bit that I could do is I was activating something in some of the people there, because they're very programmed to see the world in a different way. Yeah. And then it was time to go. It was time to move on.
Okay, so you did this, and you trained basically whatever around the topic of wellness. I know, looking at some of the stuff on this, like smoking cessation, I know that's a little bit stuck out to me that I'm recalling for some reason, but yeah, stress management, cardiovascular fitness, strength training, cholesterol, blood pressure. So it was kind of like whatever the person needed, or were there specific programs and things you implemented?
Well, the reason I got hired was to help the Air Force members who weren't passing their annual health fitness tests. So you have to be fit enough to at least run a mile or, be able to ride the bike and have a good cardiovascular fitness. So people who were failing their tests would come to me, and I would get them on a program. That's where I started, was in the fitness. And because I worked for a corporation, they paid for continuing ed. So next thing you know, I was getting certified in yoga, became a yoga instructor, and Pilates, and I did John Kabat-Zinn's mindful meditation, because it was the 80s and they were starting to realize that all these things were helping in the performance of the employees. So what started out as a fitness job became more of a wellness health promotion.
Oh, I love it. And so then what was the moment you said, I need out of here? I'm moving on.
Yeah, I was in my late 20s, and I knew I wanted to do a healing in a deeper, more meaningful way. And I was going to go to the naturopathic medical school in Portland, Oregon. And I had all my prerequisites. I also had gone to massage school at night while I was working full-time at Lockheed. So I would have something to do part-time when I decided to leave my corporate job. And I was getting ready to, go apply to the school here. And I ended up on a women's healing retreat on an airplane to Belize with a couple girlfriends. And I had never been to Central America, and it changed my life because I was learning from these indigenous healers who had never been to school. Some of them didn't know how to read or write, but they had this wealth of knowledge and information that they would get from dream visions. They would dialogue directly with the nature spirits and the plants. And I had such a profound healing.
Whoa. Okay. Hold up. Okay. Whoa. See, you make it all sound so seamless, but I got to back up just a minute. So you're Lockheed Martin. I'm slow. Okay. At some point, your professor was talking spices and all these different dimensions of wellness. But was there some point that you softened, that your science piece really softened, and you just became open to all these other points of view? Because it would seem like a science person would be in this lane, but suddenly you're just open to yoga. And you said it's the 80s, it's available and all that stuff. And then you're on a women's healing retreat, and naturopathic. How did that transition happen? I'm curious about that, because a lot of people try and make that transition and don't succeed.
I feel like it was my soul's calling, and I just started having these synchronicities of right place, right time. And I had my own health crisis that made me wake up to the fact that there was more than just the allopathic way of medicine. And I had a diagnosis of endometriosis, ovarian cyst, and I ended up in the emergency room with a ruptured cyst and a wake-up call, and had surgery. And that's when I started exploring other options of, this is what the surgeon said. Essentially, what we've done here is pulled weeds. And they're going to grow back maybe, in 3 months or, a year. So I came out of my surgery, and endometriosis is just when you have a tissue growing on the inside of the pelvis that doesn't belong there. And I was just, that didn't sit right with me. Like, this physician told me that the destiny of my healing is that this stuff is going to grow back. And it was almost like I wanted to prove to him that it didn't have to happen that way. So I started acupuncture and, yoga and meditation and visualization and all of these ways that we can holistically help the body to heal instead of just having surgeries or taking medications or taking hormones or whatever the case might be for individuals. So that was my wake-up call.
That's incredible. That must have been pretty frustrating coming out of that after going through the procedure and then having the doctor tell you, yeah, but this isn't really going to work long term. That's got to be kind of frustrating in general.
Yeah, it was frustrating, especially when it did come back. And that's when I just realized through the synchronicities of finding natural healers where they're like, there's a lot more than just physical here. You're holding a lot of emotions in your body. There's a lot of stuck energy. And I'm like, tell me more. What do you mean? And I had my degree in wellness, but it wasn't until I really had to practice all those aspects that I really understood it.
Okay, well, we're going to have to dig into that at some point, but I want to go back down to South America now. So you had some friends and they said, hey, let's go to Belize and let's do a women's healing retreat. And we're going to, was it a trip, just a party? I mean, what did you think was going to happen?
Well, I just quit my corporate job and I was doing massage full time. Again, a synchronicity. I was in a car accident and the PT who was working on me said, hey, I need a massage therapist. Do you want to work here? And I'm like, okay. So next thing you know, I transitioned out of my corporate job and was working at a PT clinic, getting the last of my prerequisites. And in a corporate job, a lot of people can relate to this. You get 14, maybe 10 to 14 days of paid time off. And all of a sudden I was like a sole proprietor and I could work really hard one week and take time off the next. I could have long weekends. So my girlfriend was like, let's go to this women's healing retreat. And there was a couple gals in Denver that would take a group of women often. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but my intuition said, yes, you're going. So we're on the airplane and all these women are reading this book, Sastoon, by this woman, Rosita Arvigo. I'm like, who's Rosita Arvigo? And we get down there and she's this amazing woman who had moved to Belize and learned from the last Maya shaman, Don Eligio Ponte. And she did a 12-year apprenticeship with him and had written this book. And it was all about women's health and abdominal health and spiritual healing with the plants and the water. So I arrived there a certain person, and when I left, I was a completely different person. I had such a profound healing experience in Belize.
Oh, okay, we have to hear what got healed.
Everything. In their tradition, they believe that there's spiritual illnesses, which in the United States, we see anxiety, sadness, and grief, or anger, there are issues that we can treat with talk therapy or drugs. And down there, they see it so differently. And they do a pulse diagnosis and they work with plant spirits and prayer and faith. And one day they were talking about this spiritual illness called tristeza, which in Spanish means sadness. And it's the kind of sadness that you just come into the world with and you don't know why it is that you have this low-grade sadness. And so they started speaking about, it's for often babies that are unwanted, or if you were supposed to be a boy instead of a girl. And all of a sudden, I just felt so emotional and I was just crying because I was the third girl and I was the third try for a boy and I was supposed to be Michael David. And so in utero, I knew that who I wasn't fitting what the desires were of the family unit outside. So something got triggered within me. And it's the land. Belize is such a powerful land and it's so healing there. In the grander scheme of things, stuff just starts to pour out of you. And I had this lovely experience where these granny healers came into the room and were whispering prayers in Spanish with these plants that they had gathered on my wrists and on my forehead and on my heart. And I was just sobbing and feeling this grief and sadness of not being good enough, or I was wrong being who I was. It was such a profound feeling. And as they were whispering these prayers, it just lifted. This heaviness, it just lifted. And all of a sudden I could take a deep breath. I could see more clearly. I felt more room in my body. And I was like, what is it that just happened? I have to learn more about this, not only for myself, but for other people. It was profound. And that was the beginning of me exploring medicine that was beyond what I had learned in the United States. It was the indigenous oral traditions that were handed down.